Hey, well, I'm walking through a place called the Devil's Punchbowl. I was looking to see if there's any background on it in terms of sorry, this is a bit of a tricky thing that I've just had to navigate over, which was that, and without without having to kind of stop the video. So it's a massive place. It's in Surrey, Hindhead to be specific. Now look, Surrey is a an area that it's kind of got a fairly poor reputation, or shall we say, depending on your outlook, a good reputation. I would say poor for the amount of activity that goes on here of a dubious nature. Not in this location specifically, but if you were to listen to, there's a video on YouTube called The Rains List. If you were to listen to that, where they detail many numerous validated accounts of satanic ritual abuse, you will know that Hampshire and Surrey are two areas where this is something that is certainly far from uncommon. But that's not the reason I'm here today. I'm not here to kind of look for anything like that. I did actually look to see if online, just quickly, to see if there was anything of note that I could kind of make a beeline for, but it would appear that there's certainly nothing. I mean, and I guess there wouldn't be there's nothing specifically referred to about this place. But this is a kind of interesting day because we've got a mixture of rain and a bit of sun. It's September. It's the best time, my favourite time of year, really. I love this. It's beautiful scenery. You kind of get these very rich colours. I'm not sure if it's kind of come through on this phone video, but yeah. So I'm sorry. This is in 4K. So it's going to be I guess it's going to take absolutely bloody ages to upload it, but there we go. I've now just noticed, I'm just wondering whether there's any sound. I've got noise reduction on. I don't know if that's going to make any difference, or whether there was any noise to reduce in the first place, considering the remoteness of this location. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, because the reason I've tried to avoid doing that is because this particular phone, whilst it's great for stills photography, what you'll get from me is just my opinions. I think I've kind of proven this to myself, really. Otherwise I wouldn't do this at all. And that is that, for whatever reason, I seem to have a bit of an understanding, a natural ability to sift out bullshit when I hear it, or form a very quick opinion of people, particularly those people who are touting themselves as experts online and who talk in a very confident way on their subject. Now, these people are, for me, always a worry. Anybody that calls themselves an expert, I immediately don't view as an expert, because I don't understand what expert means. Because, well, I understand dictionary definition, but in real life, of course, if you accept you're always learning, you're never an expert. You're always learning. You might be by comparatively you might be an expert compared to others, but that means nothing in a world that is populated by, as our elitist would-be masters would like to say, the profane. And that is the nice way, or the euphemism, really, because what they actually call us, according to Mark Passio, who I think is fairly well qualified in this area, he doesn't call himself an expert, by the way, but I think his inside knowledge of the occult, nothing wrong with the occult, by the way, but there is when it's used. And I guess it's by, well, actually, look, by its very definition, occult, meaning hidden. You know, if you're hiding information from people intentionally, it could be to their benefit. I guess that in of itself is not a good thing, because surely you would want to share that with the rest of humanity. But of course, the privileged, maybe I use that word lightly, really, because I'm not sure how privileged they really are. How many times do we see these people looking truly happy? You know, I think, therefore, that occulted, if we said that occulted knowledge is just knowledge that has been hidden from us, and it's been hidden from us because if we knew about it, if we'd had a chance to learn it, and in order to do that, you'd need to start very young, quite frankly, because it's so deep and so broad, and therefore so intimidating, that most people, even when they understand its benefits potentially for them, will just think, look, yeah, we're living in a world that could end tomorrow, or that could change so much in a very short period of time now, that really, what benefit will it do me if I've read a couple of books out of 1,000 that I need to read? So I understand that, but I guess it's just, you know, the way to look at it, or the way I look at it, is that it's not to be treated like schoolwork. You know, it's interesting. I mean, it is interesting because the very fact that we're not wanted to know about it. So, you know, people don't want you to know something, it's probably going to be fairly interesting. And it is. Look at that. I'm going to try and zoom in because I think this isn't picking it up. There's like a mist there. Yeah, it's kind of beyond the phone's capability, really. But yeah, so here is, to give you some idea of the scale of this place, I put it on wide for the moment, so you can get an idea of the size. Now, look, I guess compared to some places in the US, this is, you know, titchy, but for the UK, it's pretty big. Now, I came here, when did I come here last? I came here last at the beginning of the summer. It's been a pretty hot summer here in the UK. I mean, clearly due to global climate warming bollocks, and not. Well, I think there's definitely someone. Yeah, there is some fuckery going on with the climate. However, I don't think that's got anything to do with you and me at all. I think that is absolutely an engineered manipulation of the environment and the weather in order to push an agenda, which of course is fundamentally, as we all know, I hope you know anyway, it's fairly obvious by now, is about using guilt, misplaced guilt, our guilt, as a way of getting us to reduce our own freedom, reduce our own travel and movement. And this is something that I was rattling on about in one of my videos recently that I posted here. That was the very opposite to this, because it just had a black screen because I was in the car and ranting. Because you kind of see this everywhere now, this restriction on travel. And it's not, that's the wrong word. It's clearly a successful attempt or a program to make travel as unappealing as possible. I'm going to put this on widescreen actually. On the roads, it's because of traffic works, roadworks, not traffic, but roadworks, which then cause a problem for traffic. I've explained that in detail in an earlier video, so I won't bore you by ranting on about that again. As you know all about, doesn't matter what country you're from, I think you know about the whole thing with air travel. Travel by public transport, which they keep pushing because it's so much greener, is also prohibitively expensive, and to put it bluntly, is fucking useless in this country. So I know that because in my last 2 contracts, I was regularly commuting into London. Not something that I particularly wanted to be doing, but you do what you have to do. Certainly not at my age. I really didn't think I'd be 59, kind of up at 4 and sitting on a train to get to work. I mean, albeit that's my choice to get into work early, because I don't like being on the train with loads of other people. I'm an antisocial git. And then getting on the train at, let's say, 7 at night, and it's fucking packed. Not only is it packed, but then it would very regularly stop en route with some pathetic excuse, like, I don't know, a leaf has fallen onto the line. Not quite that ridiculous, but these would always be things that you just think, how can you justify bringing the entire, that specific journey line or that rail line to a halt and just dumping passengers who are paid? You've already paid, right? Now you can get your money back. Oh yeah. But of course you have to do that. There's the onus on you to go through this protracted process of claiming your money back. So it's not a case that you get an apology or kind of an easy process whereby they're saying, look, we screwed up, so let us help you with this. No. It's down to you to do it. It's an onerous process, and even then, it's a claim. I guess what's implicit in that kind of word and the context it's placed in is that you're claiming it. It doesn't necessarily promise you're going to get it. Travel has become something that is. Look, I mean, I'm not saying all travel's enjoyable. I'm not saying I expect to be able to have great fun traveling. But you know what? There used to be moments of fun when you were traveling. I never minded driving. I've never minded really traveling, full stop. Until the last few years, when it's just become so frustrating. So anyway, here I am, Devil's Punchbowl. Devil's Dyke is another place, actually. I must do a video there. It's close to where I used to live, which is on the way. It's on the way to Brighton, and that has also. I can't remember why this is called. This has got some kind of legend attached to it, but it's one of those. It's one of those legends that I don't think it's got any kind of any value in it. There's not. It's not like it's based. Look, I could be talking bollocks here, but from what I read, it sounds so superficial that I really don't think there's anything to it apart from just an old story that someone made up because it looks like a bowl. Could be wrong though. Please correct me in the comments if I am wrong. Anybody else also who's watching this who knows of this place, who is thinking, why the hell didn't you go and check this part of it out? Let me know. Anybody that wants to come on one of these walks, let me know, because I'd love to have an excuse, I think, to get out more. I think there's a little bit these days as a kind of a sort of a middle-aged bloke. You're walking around on your own. I'm well aware that it can make some people feel uncomfortable. It's a shame it does, but I kind of get it, and therefore I feel uncomfortable in a way because I don't want to make other people feel like that. It's almost like you have to have a purpose. So if you're walking a dog, well, that's okay, right? Or if you're running, jogging, which there's no bloody chance I'm going to be doing, then it's okay. If you're with somebody else, of course it's okay. But my girlfriend lives in kind of south of Cambridge, right? So she ain't going to be able to join me for a quick wander around a place in Surrey. So let's just zoom in a little bit, shall we? See what this is like, see what the quality is like. It's crap, I think. This is 7x zoom. Not bad, actually, depending on what it looks like once it's been processed. So what was I going to talk about? Yeah, look, I think one of the things I've learned is that because of my gotta go this way. Because of my inbuilt predilection for doom. I don't know why I've got that, I've got kids, right? And of course, the reality is that as an individual, if I didn't have children, I wouldn't be doing any of this, right? I'm sorry to say that, but because I haven't particularly, this isn't fair or strictly correct, but I guess in life what you want is, and you want to have an experience that is where the good experiences at least are balanced with, the anxiety, the stress, the bad experiences, the times when you're unhappy, depressed, hopeless, empty. And I hope for most people that is the case. For me, just is what it is, and I blame myself for it, for just dealing with it and kind of not accepting, denying it, I guess. I suppose even I'm a pessimist, I have this little bit in me that says maybe it can get better. I mean, so a part of me thinks, can it get much worse? Yes, it can get worse. It could get worse, a lot worse. I'm talking on a personal level. Things can always be a lot worse, right? People have always got life a lot worse than anybody else has, and I don't doubt that for a second. I take my father would have been a classic example of that, and he did way better in his life in dealing with those things, and then kind of becoming a kind of responsible, respectable role model than I have ever done, and for that he has my kind of enduring respect. More so as I got older, since he died, I think I begin to slowly realise that more and more. And you kind of when people have had absolutely terrible childhoods, and he had an awful childhood, really awful. I'll tell you what it was. I mean, not that you're probably that interested, but if you can imagine this, he's born into a family. He's got a brother, Ken. His brother was a year younger than him, 2 years maybe. And up until the age of 9, they lived at home with their mum and dad. Their dad was a kind of particularly irresponsible individual. heavy drinker, heavy smoker, massive guy, smoked 80, get this, 80 Navy Cut cigarettes per day, and he did that until he died in his late 80s. So much for lung cancer, I guess. But I know some people are just like that. He didn't deserve to live that long, frankly, from what I've heard, but he did. Now, his wife, my dad's mother, she tried to drown my dad and his brother and herself because she was suffering with paranoid schizophrenia. I mean, clearly badly, severely. And I guess what she did, she was thinking she was doing it for the very best. She wanted them. You know what? There are times when you think about what's coming. Clearly, don't get me wrong here. It's beyond comprehension. However, you can begin to empathise if someone is suffering from that kind of condition, how they might start to, kind of how maybe a momentary thought could start to spiral into an obsession to the point where you then go and try and do it. So she tried to drown my dad and his brother. My dad was 9, his brother was 7, and at that point they were left then because she was incarcerated for the rest of her life. Back in those days, that's how it went. And probably the best thing. I don't know if it was the best thing, but anyway. So they were left initially in the care of their father, who then proved himself to be an even less capable father because he just carried on with his lifestyle of heavy drinking. And as an example, he would always take them with him, and he'd leave them outside the pub, winter, summer, and they'd be stuck outside the pub all night while he was drinking, until he came out rolling drunk and took them home. That's what their evenings were every night. They waited outside. I mean, you wouldn't do that to a dog, would you? So there you go. And then because that finally, came to attention, I don't know who it came to the attention of, but it did. They were then moved to go and live with their aunt. And my dad credits his aunt, that's my great aunt, I guess. No matter. He credits her with actually giving him a chance in life, because at that point they were so poorly educated because of the situation that he said that neither he or his brother were really able to even talk properly. They couldn't read or write. And I mean, this is then by the age of about 10 or 11. They were basically illiterate, and their grasp of the English language and their pronunciation was so poor that they were virtually incomprehensible. They were feral almost, I guess. And what the aunt did was she was relentlessly strict, and she didn't beat it out of them. I don't think she ever did anything like that. But she effectively, she just would not let them talk without correcting every single word until I guess that's what you've got to do. I don't know. But she did that, and look, whatever you say about the method, it worked, because my dad went on to become an architect, and his brother briefly started a job at EMI, and apparently he'd started and was doing very well. In fact, my dad said he was the brighter of the two of them. He was a charismatic guy. Everybody liked him. He was funny and very intelligent, like his mum. His mum was viewed as a bit of a genius, and she was a child prodigy when she was a child. And anyway, the problem was, my dad knew about this, nobody else did, that his brother had been slowly sinking into schizophrenia over a number of years, and it started actually when they were with their aunt, and they lived in the problem was the uncle didn't want them to be there, and so they were shunned. Really, they had to live a separate life to the rest of the family. They weren't allowed to eat with them, and they had to share a single bed together for a number of years. I mean, throughout the rest of their childhood and into their middle teens, if not late teens. And for much of that time, his brother was wetting the bed repeatedly and having these horrendous nightmares and visions, delusions. So you can imagine what that must have been like for my father. And for him then to come out of all of that, cut the long story short, get a decent job, good job, got qualified, good job. He raised a family, 3 kids, and he was very careful with money, and so that his wife, my mother, was able to have a decent pension to augment the absolutely shite state pension. And that was my dad. So he's an example of what I mean when I say that there are people out there who are, really are kind of heroes, really, in many respects. Not on the superficial level, because he wasn't perfect. He was emotionally very repressed, as you might think he would be. I don't think had much of an insight into who he really was or what went on in his mind, and I guess that was probably intentional on his part. But you know what was interesting about him? Although he was a very fact-based individual, he was incredibly, he was a very rational person. He had, there were these moments where he would demonstrate this, this really open mind and a curiosity about things that weren't rational. Things like spirituality, telepathy, those kind of things. Those conversations, brief that they were, really stuck with me because they were so different from, I guess, the person that he appeared to be. So for him to be talking about those things made it even more interesting, and it made it seem even more credible. So yeah, that's my dad. So that's why I'm saying that he's somebody, who has proven, in fact, that you can overcome the worst possible kind of. I'm not saying it's the worst possible one. Yeah, they're very pretty. I mean, that's a pretty crap childhood, right? And you can overcome that and still become a responsible adult, and not have the excuse to, allow things to fall apart around you. And I guess that's where I would criticize myself very heavily because, I have done that, and I wish I had had the. I'm not saying strength. I don't think it is that. Maybe I just wish I was, slightly less disordered in my thinking to have been able to do that. Because I'm not going to say I'm a weak person. I demonstrated to myself during COVID that I was anything but weak. Well, maybe I am, but compared to the staggeringly pathetic examples of humanity that I saw around me all the way through COVID, the amounts of head-on front confrontations I would have every single day, and I'm pretty much not exaggerating, every single day with people, because I just couldn't stop myself, and often in support of others rather than just myself. I don't know what the hell this is. Right, it's okay. This is just all these kind of. All right, look, I'm not going to moan about it. I just thought I could put something a bit less cliched than those. So yeah, I just wish I could have had. I suppose I think out of anything, it's that executive functioning piece because it's the most ridiculous manifestation, right, of this disorder or these disorders. Is this executive functioning thing? I can't get my head around it. If someone were to tell me about it and try and explain it to me, I'd be thinking, "Oh, piss off!" Right? That's just nonsense. It's a poor excuse, just for being irresponsible. For not having grown up. In fact, to a degree, I still wonder if it is that. And the whole thing's just an excuse. But what it means is, in a nutshell, is you're absolutely shite at managing certain things, and it happens to be basic things, right? But fucking important things like finances, like paying car parking spaces, like when you've forgotten or when you've paid for the wrong car park by accident, which I frequently do, and you get a penalty through failing to pay the penalty, and then having to pay, then failing to pay that, and then in one case having to spend out something like £2,000. What was originally like a £1.50 car parking space, where I paid for the wrong space and not the space that my car was in. And the reason for that was, I don't know what the reason was, but no one does that out of choice. That's all I can say, right? And the thing is, when I'm earning money, I earn it, and I'm fortunate enough when I do earn money, I earn a fair bit, and so I'd just be able to pay those things off, and I wouldn't think anything further. I wouldn't have that thought process that says, "Fucking hell, what else could I have bought with this?" That would have been that wouldn't have just benefited, some greedy arsehole who's benefiting from me being disorganised and from whatever, poor executive functioning. I'm now allowing them to make even more money, these people I hate, when I could have just given that to my kids, for example, right? And so that's frustrating. Those are the things that I think, fucking hell, I wish I wasn't as crap as I am at that. But what I have done, I've tried to do something decent with that, and that is that I've made it so clear to my twins, particularly my little boy. I won't go into details why specifically him, but it's not nothing to do with gender. But it's I've made it really clear to him that he needs to use me as a classic example of what not to do when it comes to money. use me as a negative role model in that respect. And he's done exactly that, I'm pleased to say, which is fantastic. He seems to have an interest in it for its own sake, which is great. That he has that interest in money, because I don't. Right, never have. In fact, I don't know why, but I just can't get away from thinking money's dirty. And it's not because I've got some high and mighty view on it. It's because I just see it as a method of control. And I think you all know, most of you, that I'm going to be proven right on that, because that's what it always has been. Certainly with the debt system, and it's going to become a method of total control fairly soon if we're not careful. Right? Here's a frustrating thing, you know and I know, that we only need a small proportion of people to say, get fucked, we're not doing this. We don't have to do anything apart from just say we're not doing it. They're screwed. And one thing that I find so funny is this whole thing about NATO, and readiness for war, which is just such nonsense, which is such a joke. And and that's not because I'm one of these people that says, oh God, our kids, our youth of today, they wouldn't stand 2 minutes in it. Well, they probably would do just as well as any other youth, actually. And I always just get pissed off with people who do that, because I just think, sorry, but if you're talking about the kids of today, but what are you then? I mean, you may well have been involved in that. You probably played a role in it. If you're saying they're so crap, I don't believe they are, right? But for those people that do say they're useless, well, you're a bloody adult, so you've given them the world as it is, and you've created the environment that you're saying has made them crap. So what did you do about it to stop it? Fuck all. So those kind of people, I hate them, frankly. Don't like many people, but being truly honest with you, I can find fault with everybody, and myself included. So I think human beings are very flawed creatures. I think probably one of our biggest failings is our inability to admit it to ourselves and to embrace it and to say, how can I improve myself? It's taken me a very long time, and I've only just started. I haven't got enough years left to make much difference. However, anyway, so look, the whole thing about war. I mean, I've said to Zander, for example, I said to him, he's my boy, I said, listen, Zander, if at any point he's 14, right, if as you get older, there is a need, there's an enlistment or something, some call up into the army, you're not going, all right? So, even if you're 18, you can effectively make your own decision. I'm telling you now, if you do it, you do it, and I'll make my very best efforts to stop you. And the reason for that is because all you'll be doing, you won't be fighting for freedom. You'll be fighting as a blood sacrifice, and to make the very, very rich even more rich and powerful, and to help in their culling of humanity. So if you do it, you're doing it, in fact, for the very most wrong, the absolute inversion of what you're told you're doing it for, which is for freedom. You're not fighting for freedom. You're fighting to perpetuate tyranny, and therefore, you must never do it. Even if it means going to prison, you go to prison a hero and not a coward. The people that go to the front line are the cowards and the fools. I have to say, I'm sorry if you're, and look, and to be clear, I'm not working at the moment, as you know, and I'm actually having to sell stuff just to get by. To pay for petrol and stuff like that. I'm selling my the very rapidly dwindling collection of belongings, and I gave 10 quid of that to a guy who was asking for help for veterans charity, which I really didn't think I was going to do. Right, so if you'd asked me would I do that, I said no way, because anyone that's done that is potentially someone who could be pointing a gun at my child in a few years' time, doing their duty, to king and country and all that bollocks. So I surprised myself. I did it because of him, because of the guy, because he looked beaten down, he looked screwed, he looked like he'd been fucked over, which of course they have been fucked over. And I said that to him, I said, it's such a shame that you're having to do this, isn't it? I guess you kind of feel that too, that you've gone off, you've done what you thought was the right thing to do, and you've done it with the best of intentions, and here you are having to effectively, I'm going to put it bluntly, beg for money from within a country that would have called you a hero on your way out to war, and then doesn't want to know you when you get back. So that's why I did it. But I have to say that in general, my view of anyone that goes into the armed forces now, particularly with the access to information that we do have, because at the moment we do have access to information, okay? I think we'll have it for much longer, but we still do. And that access, which is unprecedented, maybe it was better 15, 20 years ago, but it's still unprecedented in terms of, the last 100 years or so. Everybody should know that if you were to join the police, join the armed forces, you are joining the wrong side. You are going to be helping the elitists enforce their will on the rest of the public, the very people that you come from as an individual. So therefore, you're a traitor to humanity and to freedom. You're doing the very opposite of fighting for freedom. You're fighting for oppression. And so therefore, I do have no respect for those people in general in the armed forces. But I guess I still have empathy on an individual basis. When you see someone who just looks, do you know what? He looked about as beaten down as I felt. And for very different reasons, obviously. And I just thought, well, if I was in his position, I'd be, I guess maybe I'd be thankful, for someone to give 10 quid. I mean, as little as that does. But at least I didn't ignore him like everybody else was doing. Probably everybody else who would say that going in the army's a good thing, right? And that, oh yeah, very noble. They probably will be talking it up and sending their kids off to go and fucking die in agony. And at the same time, they wouldn't give a penny to that guy. So at least I did that, right? And at least I have got the strength. I'm going to finish now. At least I have got the strength of character that during COVID, I surprised myself because I discovered that I don't like taking bullshit. And I'll stand up against anybody in those situations. Trust me, I stood up against anybody. Stood up against the police, security guards. I got frog marched out of Guildford Shopping Centre. Just for pointing out a sort of a logical fallacy where I've got to tell you this, right? So, like all these shopping centres, it's called the Friary Shopping Centre. They've got a food court, where all the so-called restaurants are, like McDonald's, KFC, all that kind of shit. And I was up there with the kids, and we got up, we reached this floor because there's probably people now who are going to berate me, right? But this is like once every now and again, and because it's like a treat for them. Because the good thing is their mum's far more disciplined than I am. I'm a bit of a soft touch, and they both know that, and so they wanted McDonald's. I think Xander wanted KFC. God help us. And I think back then as well, I didn't know so much about it then. Back in 2020. And anyway, I went into this car park. Sorry, car park. Gee, this is a car park. I went upstairs, right, and you've got a massive seating area, and it's all taped off, black and yellow, like a crime scene, taped off. So this is like 80% of the available area is unavailable, leaving 20% for everybody else to stand packed in together, like literally packed like sardines, while they queued up for their food. And I saw this and I just thought, this is so ridiculous that I mean, it was also pouring rain outside, right? So there was nowhere to go and eat this food either outside. So I went up to the security guard who was there. I could tell straight away he was going to be one of the biggest arseholes who ever lived, and he didn't prove me wrong. And said to him, look, can you just help me understand why, if we've got a pandemic and a deadly virus, and it's airborne, supposedly, obviously I knew it wasn't, and I know it wasn't deadly. Why is it that we're compounding the problem here by reducing the available space that people have to stand in? So in fact, people are now packed in together. So this is the very worst kind of situation, isn't it, for spreading a virus, when basically people are literally, like I would be on a crowded train, waiting to get there. Then they're all going to be eating that food, right? While they're walking back out again, with people breathing on it. So it's just ludicrous. I said, surely if you opened up that seating area, and even maybe if you just, every other table could be used, wouldn't that be better? And he looked at me. He didn't say anything. He just said, read the poster, mate. So I've read this poster, which basically just said, you can't sit up here. And I said, okay, yeah, I get that. That hasn't told me anything, though, apart from what's absolutely very obvious. I can see that with my own two eyes. I can't sit up here. That's not telling me why. So I guess I thought I'd ask you and try and understand. I thought you might know why that is. At which point he switched his camera on, his video camera on his chest, and the very fact that he did that. So I guess the what's implicit in that is I'm a threat. Okay, I'm a terrorist or something, right? I'm a dad. I've got two two young kids with me. I'm a fucking terrorist for asking, I'd have thought, a fairly reasonable question. I just lost my temper with him. I didn't do anything violent, but I kind of stepped right up to him into his space and said, "What have you turned your camera on for? Yeah, what do you think I'm going to do, you idiot?" I don't know, I called him an idiot, actually. I just said, "What do you think I'm going to do?" But he was a fucking idiot. And at which point he then calls over his colleagues. So I suddenly have 4 or 5 of these goons surrounding me. And I was unceremoniously, along with the twins, we will walk downstairs, right, to where the exit is, but you have to walk through then the ground floor of the shopping centre, where the arrows are. You have to follow the arrow, because that's the way the virus goes, obviously, because that can, it's a very intelligent virus. And so I just thought, well, fuck that, right? So I just said to Sandra and Isabella, who were fine with this kind of thing, because they'd seen me in action. And I think, I guess what you kind of hope is they see it, and well, they weren't saying anything. They certainly weren't not supporting me. Let's put it that way. And so they with me, we just walked intentionally the opposite direction to the arrows to get out, but on the wrong side. Yeah, and this caused chaos, right? Because of course all the other good fools of Guildford, the good fucking Walking Dead, as apparently they are referred to by people like the Rothschilds, they were all just walking in the correct way along the arrows. And it was causing this kind of, weird disruption where they were, it was a bit like if you see a line of ants and you block their path, it kind of causes complete bloody chaos. And that's what it did. And then I had, of course, these security guards, them all coming after us saying, "Can you walk on the side where the arrows are?" And I just said, "No, we're going to walk the way the arrows are going in the opposite direction, because unless you can prove to me that the virus can read and it can understand what an arrow is, we will go in any direction we like." Which we did, but it caused total chaos because everybody else in Guildford, in that shopping centre at that time, wanted to walk in the direction of the arrows. Now, bearing in mind, and I'm an exception to this, that Guildford is predominantly an affluent area. So that most of these people are people that would be getting into their cars at the end of their shopping trip, and they would be getting into expensive vehicles. And on the Monday, they would be going to high-paying jobs. And you think, what's happened here? How can, I'm assuming, I suppose there's a difference between intellect and qualifications, intellect and success in a schooling system that doesn't educate, it schools you. I guess that's the issue, right? But of course, a lot of these people are people who are earning, some of them will be earning, 6 figures, 7 figures. That's that kind of affluence. And very sad to see. Now, I have a theory about that, which is, of course, if you achieve success in a world like this, then it's work for you, isn't it? Right? So you're more likely to trust it than, let's say, your average working class person who won't trust it as easily, because they won't have had it as easy. They probably would have struggled. They may have had issues at school. They may have been badly behaved at school. They may have been mischievous. I'm making assumptions here, right? But they may have. But they're more. I learned that, and I learned that those people who are compliant, interestingly, are probably the people who superficially would appear, you'd say, well, they're the more intelligent, the better educated. They're not. These are the people who just comply more. They're the kids who didn't have much imagination at school, and therefore were always quite happy to not stare out of the window and daydream, because that's bad, because that means imagination. And they would just do what they were told, and they would absorb the facts. They would assimilate the knowledge that they were given, even if it was complete bullshit, and then they would regurgitate it in the required fashion in order to score the highest possible mark in their exam. Goodbye.